The Los Angeles Lakers made a trade sending out 3 second-round picks and D'Angelo Russell to get Dorian Finney-Smith. I want to talk about what that could mean for the value of the Chicago Bulls trade assets if they decide to make a trade out on the market. And wait, hold up. I'm actually going to also on today's episode talk positively about Josh Giddey's defense and the trends that we're starting to see with him defensively and why that can unlock the best version of Josh Giddey. We're going to talk about all that, plus preview the game tonight against the Hornets, all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. And so the Lakers finally made a trade, adding the wing defender that they've been coveting for a while. They sent out D'Angelo Russell and 3 second-round picks to get Dorian Finney-Smith. And on paper, when you look at this, it may not mean as much for the trade market as what one may think. But let's look at this. Dorian Finney-Smith is a 31-year-old player that's averaging 10.4 points per game, 4.6 rebounds, 45% shooting overall from the field. But, of course, we know that the biggest asset that he's bringing to that Los Angeles Lakers team is wing and point-of-attack defense, things that they surely are lacking. Now, when you look at the flip side with D'Angelo Russell, the statistical output between Dorian Finney-Smith and D'Angelo Russell isn't really that different. D'Angelo Russell is averaging 12.4 points per game on 41% shooting so far this season during this time with the Los Angeles Lakers, shooting 41% from three. 33% from three as well, taking 5.8 of those a game. When you flip that and look at Dorian Finney-Smith, his three-point shooting this season as well, he's a 43% three-point shooter, taking 5.4. So the Lakers are getting a true 3-and-D player in exchange for a point guard that, albeit, even though his averages aren't really indicative of how well D'Angelo Russell can score. D'Angelo Russell can get 20 points per game, 18 to 20 points per game, depending on how you're looking at it. But it's the 3 second-round picks. And the reason why I want to talk about that value, right, is that you want to look at what that means for the market, right? And I think that second-round picks have typically been used to get a lot of assets to a team while, not necessarily giving up, a first-round pick, right? Now, when you pair that looking at what the Chicago Bulls are giving up, not even going to talk about Zach LaVine right now. We'll get into the Zach LaVine portion in it for a second, right? In a second, I should say. When you look at Nikola Vucevic, and we heard that the trade value that teams were trying to get the Bulls to take for Nikola Vucevic earlier into the season was 2 second-round picks. Well, I hate to tell you guys, because now if that's the value, right? If the value that we're seeing right now is 3 second-round picks for a player like Dorian Finney-Smith, you better goddamn well up that first-round pick to get Nikola Vucevic in on your team. That just is what it is. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. You want Nikola Vucevic, the bare minimum level of entry should be a first-round pick. Yes, Nikola Vucevic is older than Dorian Finney-Smith by 3 years. But let's be clear here. Even with Nikola Vucevic not being the defender that Dorian Finney-Smith is, and I'm not going to try to make that conversation or try to paint it in a different light, Vooch is a bad defender. But if you're a team that's trading for Vooch, you know that, and you probably need Vooch's offense, and I would like to think that would mean that you're also getting in, you're bringing him into a team that also already has a solid defense. But let's be absolutely clear. Dorian Finney-Smith, it's not like he's making $14 million. That's $16 million less than Nikola Vucevic as well. And I'm not going to act like money does not play a part into matching those salaries and all of that. But I think when you look at Vooch and what he's given up and what he's averaging as an all-star, if the Bulls do look to trade Nikola Vucevic, the talk and the ideal now around it being 2 second-round picks, that trade with the Lakers to me ended all of that. It ended all of that. And the Bulls are right to hold that value for Nikola Vucevic. When I did say then anyways that they were right to hold the value for one of their players that is still very productive at whatever. Set it high. But now the bar of dropping it has gone even lower. If you want seconds in a trade for Nikola Vucevic, you better be given a lion's share of second-round picks, even a protected first, right? So I think that's what you have to look at when we're talking about how markets are set when it comes down to that. I would even say this. Dorian Finney-Smith and the market that it sets for Lonzo Ball, we heard that the Bulls would be willing to part with Lonzo Ball for multiple second-round picks. Yeah, you better goddamn well give multiple second-round picks. Even with Lonzo He's younger than Dorian Finney-Smith. He has a way larger injury history. Make no mistake about it. I understand that. But I'd say he's a better point of attack defender when he's fully healthy. And while his shot hasn't been as good right now, we know that you would like to think when his rhythm and his footing gets back under him, he can be a pretty good shooter as he's done before from three. So all those things play a huge part into that. And now when it comes to the Zach LaVine portion of this, right? The Bulls, here's the thing, right? The Bulls getting an unprotected first-round pick back should have already been a must for Zach LaVine. I don't care what the market is trying to say. Now, again, contract matters, and I do think that matters a lot. And the $45 million of Zach LaVine contracts really makes it, you can't really compare it much to the Dorian Finney-Smith trade just because of the money that was moved to make that trade happen. I mean, Zach is making almost triple that, right? So it's hard to kind of use the Dorian Finney-Smith to really speak too much to the value of a Zach LaVine move because of the amount of money that has to be matched. But I do think that this does put a higher light on the fact that the Bulls are not wrong for wanting a first-round pick back for Zach LaVine, in my personal humble opinion, right? And you're going to have some people that comment on this video and that have a difference of opinion. That's fine. I want everybody to have a difference of opinion. I want the discourse. I want the conversation around this. But as we look and say things or talk about the Bulls and the value that the front office is getting, I understand. I was one of the people that I've said it for the last week, like not wanting to take back the bad contract in Zeke Naji could absolutely had an adverse effect on the Bulls because that's how you get more back in the trade. And I still, to a degree, believe that, especially with the size of Zach LaVine's contract, is you have to understand you're probably going to take some bad money back in that deal. But I do think that it kind of puts a bigger light on the fact that the Bulls, they just want to make sure that they're getting something. If they're going to move on from Zach, if they're going to move on from Vooch, if they're going to move on from Lonzo, they want to make sure that they're getting something back. And despite what, Iko Bean still got to respond to the fact that he said Gar Forman drafted Kirk Heinrich and Ben Gordon and Derrick Rose, which he did not. Like, shout out to Iko Bean. I know he's going to, anytime trade talks, Iko Bean gets triggered and he has to come out, but he hides himself when he says something wrong and you call him out on it. He hides into the next comment like it didn't just happen. But shout out to Iko, big supporter of the channel. But when it comes down to that, I think that, the Bulls should want value back. Now, I've said it many times before. I think some Bulls fans do have a skewed view on what the Bulls power is in a type of trade like this. The market still dictates everything, right? And I do think that the Bulls are not going to get a 1-for-1 trade. The Bulls are going to lose the Zach LaVine trade in the sense of getting back equal talent on the onset. Now, the Zach LaVine move is all about helping maximize, keep our picks, and what future assets that you get, what those future assets to turn into. And that's the part that's really uncertain, especially with this front office. And I understand where a lot of Bulls fans sit in the fact of, well, why are we moving him if we're not getting back equal talent? And there's a lot of gone into that, but I've covered that ad nauseum. At some point, you just got to realize some Bulls fans just don't want to understand the reasoning because they're fans and they don't want to think that their team is going to make a move that's not going to necessarily make them better immediately. And that's just the reality of it. And it is all a chance. And that's a part that I think we all got to realize. It's all a chance. And like I've said many times before, there's no one move that completely fixes everything for the Bulls. At this point, it's about helping kind of guide the direction. And then within that direction, you got to make smart moves within that to really kind of solidify it and bring it all home. And that's the part where it really does get scary for this front office. But listen, the Lakers is the first move. Well, not really the first. I guess in fairness, the Dennis Schroeder trade was kind of the first kind of larger trade in the sense of a player being moved. But the Lakers have now made their move. They've kept both their first-round picks in making this move as well. So could they be open to making another one? I don't know. I may discuss that over on NBA Central, which more of you guys need to go over and subscribe to. Go over to NBA Central if you love content like this, but generally around the NBA. But shameless plug. So we'll wait to see what more moves happen. And the Bulls very well, that what they could be waiting on as well. Now, that could come back to bite them in the ass, especially if one of the teams that are reportedly interested in Zach LaVine are one of the teams to make the next move. But I do think you want to look at that also. Like, if the Bulls kind of wait and keep letting the market kind of dictate the value, it could actually strengthen their case in some of these deals that they're rumored in, or some of these teams that could be rumored to interest in some of their pieces. Could also hurt it, because all it takes is that one team to make a trade that's stupid, and then everybody else around the NBA is like, well, this is kind of the value now, Bulls. So the Bulls got to walk that thin line, And I hope that AK and Eversley, if they do decide, and I keep throwing an if because, I have been kind of more so talking about it as if it's uncertainty, mainly just because that's what the talk is around focused on. But like I've tried to do more so lately is make sure that I point out, like, there's the biggest chance still is, the biggest percentage, if we're placing it on that, is still that the Bulls don't do anything. And that's not only because the level of deals that are offered or not, but it's also just because of, that's this front office. That's their MO. Like, there's that bit in the back of your mind where you kind of always think like, all right, why are you going to do something now when you haven't before, right? So that plays a little bit of a part into that as well. You can't deny it. So, we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it develops. We'll see how it keeps turning. But, as the trades and as we lead closer and closer, like I said, by mid-December, you're going to, like, I know there are a few deals that go down on trade deadline day, but really, about after the turn of the new year, I wouldn't be surprised if that first 2 weeks of January, we start seeing some of these bigger and more rumored pieces out on the market start being moved. And that could definitely set pace a lot. And keep in mind, the Bulls already said it's a 35 game evaluation. I think that, by the time we're that is like January 5th, we're only a few games away from that right now. And so right now, listen, the Bulls are 32 games into the season, 3 games left. And then we'll see. Maybe the Bulls do start making moves. Maybe they don't. Maybe they don't make none at all. But if that evaluation holds true, we're not too far away from that. But let me know what you guys think is always down below. But with that said as well, I do want to talk about Josh Giddey. And this is going to be something where Josh Giddey haters are not going to like this segment at all. But like I've told, even when I've told Josh Giddey stands, when we have honest evaluation, you got to be objective and look at what things are objectively telling you. And you got to be able to review it. And so my Josh Giddey haters, you're not going to like this segment. But we got to listen. We talk about it. We talk about basketball here. We talk about the realities of basketball. If you don't like it, you got to ask yourself what you're trying to motivate it by. But with that said, there was a game earlier in the season, right, in November, where Josh Giddey was pulled in the Bulls when they had a victory the Cavs beat the Chicago Bulls 144-126. That was a game in which Josh Giddey was pulled in large part in the fourth quarter. And Josh Giddey said this after the game: "I just didn't guard well enough. Myself right on top of that list. Probably 1, 2, and 3 on that list. I say that game in Cleveland was probably the turning point." And so since that time, right, and Billy, I'm going to read some words from Billy Donovan real quick here, and then I'm going to get into the numbers, right? When you look at the way that Josh Giddey has been improving, Billy Donovan said this: "I've seen growth in that area. I've seen more competitiveness in that area. He's got good size, good length, good feet. The biggest thing is how he can navigate screening actions and get over it. He's capable, but he has to do it consistently." And here's something that I'm going to say, right? Through the month of November, Josh Giddey has drastically improved. When you look at Josh Giddey, for his career, he's a 115 defensive rating. That's not good. League average is 110. Higher is worse with defensive rating. You want the defensive rating to be low. And this was all kind of brought about. I wanted to look at what his defensive rating was in that game against Milwaukee, because that was one of the most active defensive games that I've ever seen from Josh Giddey. He had a defensive rating of 99. And when you look at the month of December so far for Josh Giddey through 5 games in the month of December so far, and I like to look at that sample size just because 6 games in the month of December. Let me fact check myself. Josh Giddey has a defensive rating of 104.8. That's not just good. That's great. Now, of course, the question is he going to maintain it? And there's still been wild fluctuations, right? So let's just go through it game by game. December 2nd, the Chicago Bulls faced off against the Brooklyn Nets. In that game, Josh Giddey had a 95.7 defensive rating, right? And let me be clear here in this. Defensive rating isn't the end-all, be-all. I want to make it clear in that. Defensive rating is not the end-all, be-all. But like I say with everything, you want to pair what these analytics, you want to pair that with the eye test and pair that with the box score. And you kind of get a better kind of feel when you do those things. At least I think, right? So just to kind of put that in perspective. In that same game against the Brooklyn Nets that we're talking about, he had 20 points, 13 assists, and 13 rebounds and 11 assists. It was his triple-double game. His first game where I was forced to eat some Vegemite. So that game, he had a defensive rating of, like I said, 95.7. Then you get to the game against the San Antonio Spurs. Bad game. In that game against the Spurs, it wasn't his best outing. He played 24 minutes, only 8 points in that game, 4 assists, 4 rebounds. His defensive rating in that game was 120.5. Terrible. Then you go back and you want to look at that again, and let's go to the next game. The next game that he played was against the Indiana Pacers the day after my birthday on December 6th. He had 10 points, 6 assists, 5 rebounds in that game. He shot 38% overall from the field. That game was a loss by the Chicago Bulls. In that game, Josh Giddey had a 130 defensive rating. Terrible defensive rating again, right? And then you flip to the game against the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, this was a game in which Josh Giddey played 32 minutes in that game. He had 9 points, 11 assists, 7 rebounds, almost a triple-double in that game. And in that game, he had a defensive rating of 101.1. That was a pretty good game for Josh Giddey. Again, he didn't have the huge scoring output, but he affected in a lot of areas on the box score. He also had, a really good defensive rating in that game. The Bulls did lose that game by 8 points, but it is what it is. Then you had the December 13th game, right? This is after 5 days off. That game against Charlotte, he played 29 games. In that game against Charlotte, he had a 84.9 defensive rating. And this was a game in which they were missing LaMelo Ball. He had a size advantage against a lot of the guards there as well. In that game, he had 17 points, 7 assists, 9 rebounds. Really good output overall from him, right? And then you get to the game against the Toronto Raptors, right? This was a game, the last game before he missed an extended period of time. He missed 4 games between that and the game a couple days ago against Milwaukee. He had 11 points, 9 assists, 8 rebounds in that game. In that game, he had a defensive rating of 103. Then he made his return against the Milwaukee Bucks. We already know the story there. 23 points, 10 assists, 15 rebounds in that game. He had a 99 defensive rating. What is all that telling you when you put that all together? I've said before that Josh Giddey is a confidence player, right? When you look at that, every game that Josh Giddey's had a great defensive rating, he's gotten a near triple-double, meaning that he's gotten a lion's share of assists, a lion's share of rebounds, and points, a solid number of points, right? Because he's not always going to be a big-time scorer. Sometimes it's going to be 10, whatever it is, right? And over the month of December so far, Josh Giddey's averaging a near triple-double, 14 points, 8 assists, 8.9 rebounds, basically 9 rebounds. He's shooting the ball 51% from the field, only 25% from 3. But again, we know Josh Giddey's not a 3-point shooter. But what is this all pointing towards? Josh Giddey is playing really solid defense lately. Now, it's still not consistent defense, right? And I think even my Josh Giddey fan stands, right, they're different things, are going to look at that and say, well, Haize, it is what it is. You can't be a great defender all the time. And that's true. Josh Giddey right now, when you look at the Chicago Bulls, he's had more sub 100 defensive ratings, and keep in mind, lower than 100 is good. He's had almost more sub 100 defensive rating games than his entire 3 years with the OKC Thunder. Almost. I say almost. And there's a high chance that he's going to finish this season with more sub 100 defensive rating games than his whole career with the OKC Thunder. Josh Giddey came into the season saying that he wanted to be an improved defender. And actually, at the start of the season, he was looking like an improved defender. When the Bulls started hitting some losing in that, the confidence started being shaken. When he started getting pulled in fourth quarters, the confidence started being shaken for Josh Giddey. Now, again, I would like to say players they need to be consistent. And if your confidence is shaken, that's another reason why you're going to get pulled. But he's 22 years old. But I'm saying this, and again, this is objectively what the numbers are telling us. This is not Haize trying to push a narrative. This is me just strictly talking about what the reality and the trends are. If we're going to talk about negative trends, you got to be open to talk about positive trends, even if it's one that you don't like. And again, I want to see everybody on the Bulls do well. Talking about for my people that are, for some reason, just have it out for Josh Giddey. Josh Giddey is improving. And he's improving not only with confidence, but he's improving with the effort. You see the difference in effort from Josh Giddey on the court. And if you don't see the difference in effort, you're just being willfully blind, right? Josh Giddey has turned it into the first time in his career where he's turning into a plus defender. So far, players that Josh Giddey guards are averaging 2.3 points less per 100 possessions. And that's a big trend that has just started developing. At the beginning of the season, it wasn't like that. It wasn't like that. The Bulls are also a positive. Remember, I talked about it before. The Bulls had, for a period of time there, were losing the minutes that Josh Giddey plays. The Bulls are now a positive 2.9 in games where Josh Giddey plays. I'm just saying, the month of December, and I think that with the gap that he was out, that was 4 games, it was kind of, I didn't really pay attention to trends, but this month of December may be, and Billy Donovan talked about that. He said it before Josh Giddey returned that he really felt like Josh Giddey and Kobe were starting to find their balance between each other before Josh Giddey went out. He may be on to something. Now, we'll keep watching it and how it goes over the month of January as December is ending now, and it will get more data. But I'm just saying it's something to look out for that Josh Giddey, again, I'm not expecting him to be a plus defender every game, but he's improving defensively. And that's the thing that you want to see for Josh Giddey is improvement. If Josh Giddey, with the way he's able to create, the way he's able to rebound, the way he's able to get to the rim at times, if he can turn into a solid enough defender, that's going to help the Bulls win games. And so that's just it. I just wanted to talk about that aspect. I know everybody's not going to like it. It is what it is. I know that Josh Giddey, for some, has become the pinpoint of the Bulls' dire. And it is what it is. It happens for every player. It's always going to happen. It was Vooch. It was Zach for a while. It was DeMar at times. It was P. Will, right? Over the last handful of years, it's starting to turn into Josh Giddey. But, hey, one thing that I will say about Bulls fans, if you do it consistently and you improve consistently, eventually they'll turn around. And I hope Bulls fans are leaving an open mind to really evaluate and to look at what Josh Giddey is doing, and we'll see what's going to happen there. Now, the Bulls do have a game tonight against the Charlotte Hornets as well. And this is a game where you got some players that are listed as day-to-day. LaMelo Ball, I think, is, last I read, is slated more likely to play, him and Brendan Miller in this game. And so the Bulls, who faced off against the Charlotte Hornets teams before that was missing some key players, are going to be facing off against a Hornets team that, may have their full roster at this point. So going to be an interesting game to watch. I think it's going to be a fun game, but things don't change for the Bulls. They need to keep giving that effort defensively, especially while you have Ayo Dosunmu out. And I think the trend to watch in this one is, does Kobe White keep up what Kobe White's been doing? 18 drives per game he's averaging over the last 2 games, where he's averaging 10 on the season. That has really been a big part of this turnaround that we've seen for the last couple of games for Kobe White. I've said it before, I'm not willing to take 2 games and say that he's out of the slump. But again, let's get another game in there. Let's see how him and Josh Giddey perform. Let's see how this bench performs as well. This bench was a big reason of what lifted us up as well over the Milwaukee Bucks. Can they keep doing that? Because we're going to need it. Now, Zach LaVine didn't have to score a lot. He didn't do a lot of the scoring in the last game against the Bucks, but you can't bet on that, right? So you want to keep seeing how that balance is going to shake out between the Bulls starters and the rotation. And also, aggressive P. Will. Keep watching out for aggressive P. Will. And like, P. Will is slowly, while the stat sheet hasn't improved greatly for P. Will, you can see it on the court. P. Will is starting to be a more aggressive, more consistently. And we'll see if that continues in a game where he's probably going to be guarding either Miles Bridges, Josh Green, or Brandon Miller on every possession that he's out there. Let's see what P. Will can bring. But we'll be live tonight for the pregame, the halftime hangout, and postgame shows, all live on the channel. So make sure you guys stay in tune with us and hit that subscribe button for that. The Charlotte Hornets are in the midst of, I think, like an 8-game losing streak. And we know that the Bulls tend to allow teams to get out losing streaks. So it actually started with us. Hopefully it doesn't end with us as well. Let's keep that losing streak going for them. Let's see if the Bulls can get a dub, man. But I love you guys. Thank you guys so much for your time. Make sure you guys are following us at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. BullsCentralPod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. That's thanks to you lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.